Going on, guys? Austin here with 5 Minute Fantasies Week 7 Booming and Busting Running Backs. My start of the week, I'm going to say, is going to be Philip Lindsay. Over the last 2 weeks, the Colts as well as the Texans have really shown a blueprint on how to take out the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a divisional game, which means it's going to be, it's going to be black and blue. It's going to be real bruise 'em up. And I think that, Philip Lindsay could end up getting a lot of the touches on offense this week. They're really trying to keep Kansas City's offense off the field, and Philip Lindsay has been working out pretty well. So, look for him to have a big game in terms of touches and yards. Another start of the week, I'm going to say Aaron Jones. Make sure to put him in your starting lineups this week. Aaron Jones, he hasn't had a very impressive season. He's had a few decent games, and he had the one fantastic game against Dallas. But this Oakland rush defense isn't very good. Plus, the Packers are really going to be looking to take pressure off Aaron Rodgers while, their receivers are kind of like, the star of the game against Detroit was a guy named Lazard. Never heard of him before. I guess he was on the practice squad. And then, you had that one guy, I think it was like Shepard, who was fielding punts and, dropping passes, getting intercepted, things like that. So, look for a run-heavy game for the Green Bay Packers this week. As I mentioned in my quarterback video, look to start Mark Ingram, definitely, and Chris Carson, as well as Jordan Howard, and maybe in the flex spot another one of the other Philadelphia running backs, if you've got them. But it's going to be those are going to be run-heavy games from those offenses that week. Marlon Mack against the Houston Texans. I think that the formula to beat the Kansas City Chiefs is not that unlike the formula to beat the Houston Texans. And the Houston Texans defense can be had on the ground. So look for a potential, not a resurgent game, but look for another one of those like early week games from Marlon Mack where he gets about 30 touches, maybe 130 yards, kind of a thing like that. And then Frank Gore. I'm going to say, start Frank Gore. I believe he's going to be the premier running back this week against Miami. It's his former team, and it doesn't really mean much when you're like 80 years old like he is, but be sure to pay attention to that. That on top of the fact that Miami has a horrible defense and that Buffalo is just going to be trying to wind out the clock, basically. My sit of the week is going to be surprising. I'm going to say sit Ezekiel Elliott. I think that Philadelphia, even though Philadelphia has a really poor secondary, it's a horrible secondary, I think that they know that the only way to slow down Dallas is to basically tee up on Ezekiel Elliott and make Dak Prescott throw. Because when Dak Prescott throws, especially with Amari Cooper out, Dallas loses. So I think that with the better defensive line that Philadelphia has compared to their secondary, I think that they could just be putting a lot of focus on Ezekiel Elliott and then letting Dak Prescott see if he can make anything happen. Another sit of the week is going to be Le'Veon Bell. I know Le'Veon Bell's another premier running back in the NFL, but he's going up against New England, and I think that Bill Belichick is going to have a really great defensive game plan. I think they're going to be doing a bump and run, kind of like man coverage on the wide receivers, because Bill likes to do that, and then basically just kind of like stacking the box instead of rushing the passer. So be careful about starting Le'Veon. Another sit of the week is going to be Kerryon Johnson. The Detroit offensive line has struggled to run the ball as of late. That on top of the fact that the Minnesota defense is still really good rush in terms of rush defense. They're not the best against the pass anymore, or especially against like that middle of the field area. But definitely be careful about starting Kerryon Johnson this week. I'm going to say sit the Chargers running backs. I still like the Tennessee defensive line and like that middle of the field front seven type defensive lineup. So whether it's Melvin Gordon or Austin Eckler, who I think is extremely underrated again so far. I think that the Chargers running backs aren't going to be getting a lot of good touches just like they did in last week. And then Alvin Kamara. I think that Chicago is going to want to put the game into Teddy Bridgewater's hands. I know that's what Tampa Bay did, and it didn't work out for them, but I think Chicago has a lot more faith in their pass rush and in their secondary than Tampa Bay does. So look for Alvin Kamara to kind of get teed off on a lot. And then another one, Adrian Peterson. I know that the Washington Redskins, their head coach just said they're going to be going to a much more run-heavy offense. And Adrian Peterson, just had his big game against Miami. But definitely don't start him this week. The San Francisco 49ers defense is for real. They have 5 top 17 overall picks on their defensive line, whether it be Solomon Thomas or Nick Bosa or Eric Armstead, any of those guys. Stay away from them this week.